So Spencer, we were talking about referees and that entire business and trajectory, which has nothing to do with real estate. So anyways, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think everyone knows, at least that I know in this business and in commercial real estate in general, that starts off as an analyst and kind of moves their way up. They all start off by kind of looking at a CRE at some point in their career, adventures in commercial real estate, where they learn how to model properties and kind of learn all the basics that I think it's hard to.
Even if they don't learn how to model proproperties, I think you've saved
a lot of time.
All of our listeners will thank you for saving their skin.
Totally.
24 hours before something's due.
So I think that's how I initially knew of your name, was founding that. But there's so much more that you're working on than a CRE. So I think, welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself and how you got into real estate, and then we'll dive into kind of what you're working on.
Geez, that's a long story. First off, great to be here. Great to sit at this table with you guys. Excited to talk about what the world of the future world of real estate looks like.
Yeah.
I'll say this about ACRE. The lesson learned for me from ACRE is when you offer value to people with no expectation of anything in return, it comes around in so many different ways that you never can imagine. And so, not that I'm going to start off the podcast with advice, but I would say for the young generation in our industry, care less about what someone can give you and more about how you can contribute back to them, and you'll be served well.
Yeah, and I'm sure that happens to you a lot. I mean, we were talking before we started earlier, just how many people probably reach out to you to get some career advice, I imagine.
Yeah. So the greatest value for me from ACRE is just the people that I'm able to connect with. I mean, I'm here with you guys because at some point in time,
that's right,
Michael Velasco and I decided to start giving real estate financial models away for free on the internet.
Yeah. How do you know Michael? What was the connection?
Yeah, so we started ACRE as grad students. We were both at Cornell studying real estate. We had a bit of paranoia, to be frank. So we both came from atypical backgrounds. We wanted to move to the institutional side of the business. We learned early on that first year of grad school that we needed this skill, real estate financial modeling. And neither he or I had it, nor did we have anything on our resume that demonstrated that we had it. And so this was our idea. What if we created a blog that essentially became our portfolio of models? It was never intended to be a business. We never thought that anyone other than employers would go to this website.
Yeah.
And so let's just put our models on there. Let's write a description about the model. Let's create just a walkthrough of how to use the model. And then when we apply for jobs, let's put the link. That's why it has such a silly name.
So funny.
Adventures in CRE, that's not a name for a business, right?
I mean, listen, when I first got into the business, I didn't think it was a real thing. I was like, what is this ACRE? Right. And then I found out that every single person I know that started in commercial real estate in the last 7-10 years, does that sound right?
Yeah,
has touched it at some point.
By the way, I've been just in the nature of financial modeling and all this, not to geek out too hard. I can identify one of Spencer's models instantly. Anytime somebody says, we did our own underwriting and they send it to me.
It's either his model or they borrowed from it.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. The second I open it, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Which is another lesson. Don't pretend like you're using one of our models. Everyone can use it.
What does it feel like to know that almost everyone is using a byproduct of your model in some way or fashion?
First off, one of the things that frustrated us, so 10 years ago, it's been a little over 10 years since we registered the domain and began sharing models in ACRE. And one of our frustrations was, and how this website came around, is we were emailing alumni asking them for examples of models. Because people are telling us, you need to know how to model an apartment development deal. It's like, I don't know what an apartment development model looks like. I can imagine one in my mind, but I want to see what does an institutional quality apartment development model look like, so that if I build it and I send it to an employer, they go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. And so we'd email alumni, and they would all say inevitably the same thing, which was, I'm going to send you a model. Don't share it with anyone. It's highly proprietary.
Yeah.
As if the methodology to model real estate cash flows is actually proprietary. It's not.
Yeah, right. And it's the data that's going in it that really matters, right?
So, yeah, it's the inputs that matter. So, like, how do I feel? It is nice to know that we're now at a stage in our industry where no one thinks about the mechanics between the models as being proprietary. Yeah. Certainly the inputs are proprietary. That's where you gain your edge. But grateful to have contributed.
Yeah, I think you really did. I think you definitely made a difference in that world because people they don't like showing their models or sharing their models often. And it's like, I never really got that. But to your point, it's everyone thinks they have their own edge to the way that they do it. Okay, so you guys started ACRE as a way just to kind of share your models because no one else was doing it. And then what? People started just reaching out, or they found you online, or what was the next step there?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this because one of the things that's important to recognize about these models is while Michael and I built call it version 1, what's cool about a crowd like this is that nerdy people around the world download these models and they quickly find bugs.
Yep.
More importantly, they recognize ways to improve the model and they start giving input. And so one of the features of ACRE, and I think one of the main reasons it has gained the following that it has is we as a team are constantly updating these models based on the feedback from the crowd. And so you're talking about some models having been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times, updated hundreds of times, thanks to the feedback of the crowd. It means you have industry built models. In a way.
It's like a crowd sourcing way of modeling, but the more people looking at it, the more. Yeah.
So, but back to your question, like. Where it started was Michael and I sitting in Statler Hall saying to ourselves, okay, which model should we build first that will most likely appeal to, he eventually went to Hines, I went to the real estate investment arm of NML, I wanted to go to a life co, he wanted to go to a developer. It's like, what model will be most relevant to those? And so we started building models. But what's interesting is we had keyword-rich blog posts where these models were shared, and we had a video. And Google, at least at the time, this is changing now with AI search and all that, but at the time, Google very much liked the type of content that was on those pages. And couple that with, no one else was doing this, outside of some sites that were selling models, we quickly rose up the search engine rankings. And what that means is people started showing up to the site and we started getting these emails from people. Oh, I downloaded this model. It's so cool. Could you do this? Or, hey, can I get on the call? And so one email led to 2 to 4 to 10 to 20 to 100. There was a point in time early post grad school where we were just overwhelmed with emails. Like every day we were getting dozens and dozens of emails. And Michael and I, because early on, and this was never intended to be a business. And so we felt like an obligation to everyone that emailed us to email them back. And so I would spend hours every night, my poor wife, it's like responding to these people's emails, right? Because it was fun. And they had great questions and I wanted to update the models and
you probably learned a ton just from the questions and from people.
I learned a ton from that.
But you're doing this for free. And I've noticed, even today, people can go online and download these models for free. But there is an option. If they want to donate, they can donate.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked.
How many people are actually donating?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I've always wanted to know.
First off, we don't expect anyone to pay anything. What happened was, in the first year or two, we started getting people regularly saying, hey, what's your PayPal? What's your Venmo? I want to send you a few bucks. Really appreciate the model, right? People, they get value. They realize they've given nothing in return. And there's a certain subset of people who want to contribute, okay? And there was this point where I was getting wine and letters in the mail.
People are shipping you wine as a thanks for giving them models.
Yeah, like I said, he's literally saved so many asses 24 hours before an IC committee.
That is so funny.
And so what happened was, so Michael and I sat down, we went, okay, well, how do we do this? And we thought, well, maybe what we'll do is just a donate button if you want to donate. Well, what we quickly learned is you actually can't have Stripe or PayPal donation links unless you are a nonprofit.
Okay.
And so we couldn't do that. And so then we just went on the internet. It's like, what are some options? This is pre-ChatGPT, so we couldn't search AI. We can explore options with our AI.
And we'll get into that, by the way.
And we learned about pay what you want, which has never really picked up any steam anywhere else. And we thought, well, it's not exactly pay what you want. It's more pay what you're able. And the reason why we say able is we want to communicate, especially to the young professionals, like, we don't expect you to pay anything. Mm-hmm. Even to the rich guys and gals out there, download them all for free. We do not see it as a revenue source. We see it as a service. And again, the models have been built through the crowd. Mm-hmm. And so we don't feel a level of ownership that we might otherwise feel. And so we introduced the pay what you're able. Now, initially, and some of you, if your ACRE follows, might be annoyed that we have a $20 minimum. Let me explain why we have a $20 minimum. So we would get a lot of $1, 50 cents, 10-cent donations. And we quickly realized that the accounting effort costs more to process. And so we're like, okay, we got to put a minimum with this. Or it's just, it's like you're actually costing us money if you throw in $1. So we appreciate the $1.
It's either 0 or 20 or more.
Or 20 and more, yeah.
What's the most you've ever gotten? Can you disclose that?
Oh, yeah. No, of course. I think $1,000 probably.
That's pretty good.
That's really
nice. So you really saved someone.
Yeah. So, well, and there's certain people who have downloaded dozens of models. I mean, we have 70-something models on the site. I think in a moment, go, well, I got to.
If you're downloading 70 models, come on. Pay it back a bit,
Yeah, but you don't have to pay it back to us in dollars. Though. That's the thing. We really believe in pay it forward. So it may be, help the analysts in your team.
Yeah.
Introduce them to ACRE, whatever it may be, right? There's a lot of ways that you can contribute to ACRE that is not monetary.
I've seen firsthand how the right platform can make all the difference for advisors and their clients. With decades of collective experience in investment sales, debt placement, and equity placement services, Graysteel has built a culture where collaboration, relationships, and excellence power results. Backed by concierge-level infrastructure, proprietary technology, and an entrepreneurial mindset, the firm enables professionals like myself and our team to deliver tailored solutions, precision-driven pricing strategies, AI-enhanced insights, and exceptional value at every stage. Discover how top professionals are scaling their business and continually unlocking new opportunities for their clients at graysteel.com. So how is ACRE being monetized today? Is it mostly that, or are there other routes of monetizing it, or is it really just something you like doing because it's fun?
Okay, so first off, Michael and I have committed to ourselves that we will never do ACRE as a full-time job. Mm-hmm. Okay, we think that's counter to the purpose, which is, hey, let's make this a tool for the industry. At the same time, we have an audience. The larger the team gets, if you talk to the ACRE team, they see it as a business.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Well, there's a whole team now, right?
Yeah, the whole team. 12 people, and
they're doing content and
so
much.
Our product is our Accelerator program. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a comprehensive training program. It's now widely used. Harvard, Columbia, NYU, name the list, down the list of universities, most major companies, which I won't name them because I don't want, but think of the big companies, they're using it. Some use it exclusively. Several of the big brokerage firms use it for, hundreds of incoming brokers every year. So that is our call it monetization.
Got it. So that actually costs money to be part of the Accelerator program.
And it's called Accelerator because Michael and I, seems like everything we do at ACRE is about not making money, but we actually don't think you learn to model through courses, through training. the reality is you learn to model the same way you learn to play, say, an instrument, which is on your own in a dark room. Yeah. Likely you have some inspiration from someone, and so you try to like mimic.
Right.
Michael, before he got into real estate, tried to be a rock star, and they toured around his little band. And he described for me, like, he had several artists that were his inspiration. He'd literally sit there and he'd try to like mimic how they play. He's a phenomenal guitarist, Michael is. And that's how modeling is, not to over romanticize it, but everyone has their own style. You've got to learn the fundamentals and the mechanics, but at the end of the day, you model differently than I do. Michael and I model very differently from one another. And so we were getting a lot of pressure to launch a training program. And so we said, well, you don't really learn it that way. So how about we create a way to accelerate the process of mastering the skill? We launched our Accelerator, which is case-based. So it's building blocks. So we said, okay, if we were to like learn this skill over again, how would we do it? Not that this is supposed to be an infomercial for our Accelerator, but I think this is important.
And CRE Daily is also
teaching
too.
But the point of like, for everyone who's wanting to learn the skill, yes, take a class. That's all great. Yeah. But at the end of the day, how you really get good is you iterate over and over again on it. So anyway, that's ACRE.
Got it.
So at what point did you guys decide to add the Accelerator and all the other resources? You have a job board that goes around now. Like, I know you said you would never commit and make this a full business, but it's a really big platform at this point. So like, when did you guys start making these decisions?
Yeah, great question. So everything, even to today, what happens, how we decide to do something is either Michael goes, oh, that'd be cool. I wish that existed. Okay. So for instance, we have this series where we profile universities teaching real estate. We now have hundreds of profiles. Many of them come with videos with alumni or students talking about their experience at that place. And where that came from is when he and I were looking for schools to study real estate, nothing like that existed.
Yeah.
And so this moment happened, I think it was 2016, 2017, where Michael and I are like, I wish that existed. Well, let's create it. Right? We don't charge universities for the profile. We make zero on that. Okay.
You have to start calling this philanthropy as opposed to you just not making money. You're a philanthropist.
It's a labor of love for us. It's fun and it's cool and everything we do there. It's like, in fact, early on, Michael was sitting at his desk in San Francisco at Hines. I was at NML. The site was picking up some steam. It had served its purpose, which was to get us jobs.
Yeah.
And he called me up. He's like, man, I'm swamped. But all I want to do is go home and write, build another model. But when do we stop doing this? And I thought for a second, I said, you know what? I stop doing this when it stops being fun. And so everything we do, it's about, okay, what would be fun to do?
Yeah.
One of the reasons, so we have a podcast, but we call it an audio series. The reason it's an audio series is like, if we had to do it every week, it wouldn't be fun because we got too much going on. And so once a year, twice a year, we all fly to somewhere fun.
Oh, that's cool.
And we record eight episodes or 12 episodes or whatever time we have. And so everything we do, it's like, oh yeah, that would be interesting. That would be fun. So we've added the university profile. Job board was another one of those where it's like,
why haven't Alex and I been asked to come on the pod? That's what we really want to know.
Let's get you guys on.
I thought that was, and where's our ACRE hat? Oh, damn it.
All right. Well,
you got me a no cap hat.
So come on.
I want to switch the topic a little bit because there's so much to unpack in this one business. So fast forward, at some point you go through NML. I think you did a couple other things along the way. You've like started looking at your own land. You were brokering, putting deals together. How did Stablewood come about?
Yeah. So pre-grad school, I spent over 10 years in residential land development, including 6 years living in Central America, developing housing in Panama.
Wow.
Okay? And very boutique. I lived pre-grad school in the world where you never had money. All right. So,
so how'd you end up in Panama? What was the track there?
So
I took the canal.
I started my career in land brokerage. 3 years in, went to work for one of my clients. Mm-hmm. And I was a hot shot. I knew it all. It was so easy. This is pre-GFC. A friend of mine, we started a mortgage brokerage. We grew to 3 locations. We had 100 brokers at one point in time. This is in the Pacific Northwest. And we were so smart and we knew it all. I didn't have an undergraduate degree at the time, so I went right into brokerage. And we just got punched in the face. And our mortgage brokerage, 70% of what we originated was Alt-A, which was like a sister to subprime. Essentially the same lenders who did subprime would do Alt-A. Alt-A was like the subprime, but for creditworthy borrowers, right? And we just got smacked in the face. And went from doing very well to the one marketable skill I had, which is this ability to like identify land sites, had no value because land became illiquid.
Yeah.
Like virtually illiquid in the GFC. And the mortgage brokerage just collapsed. In fact, there was one moment for several months where we lived in my in-laws' basement. I mean, it's humiliating.
Wow. Well, and you did this organically, the mortgage brokerage business. I mean, you and some friends just kind of said, hey, let's do this.
My best friend was a mortgage broker, and we were golfing one day, and he's like, hey, there's this, what if we did a no-fee mortgage brokerage concept, a flat-fee mortgage brokerage concept, right? At that time, all mortgage brokers, at least in the Pacific Northwest, were 50-50 splits or 60-40 splits. And he's like, hey, what if we did a flat-fee brokerage concept? And so anyway,
GFC hits, that tanks.
And I had one marketable skill that had no market value. I didn't have an undergraduate. I had 28 credits from Boise State with a 1.9 GPA. Like I had no prospects, but I did speak fluent Spanish. I'd lived some time in Latin America, and I had seen this phenomenon of an emerging working class in these Latin American countries. And so the partners of the development shop that I was working at, I went to them and I pitched them this idea of, well, what if we developed housing in Latin America? And over about 6 months, talked them into it. And ultimately they said, hey, we'll do it, but we need someone down there running the project. And so I moved my wife, and we had a 3-week-old.
Wow.
And we moved down there, and for 6 years we developed housing in Panama. And, it was supposed to be 3, turned into 6 because nothing goes fast in countries like that. But
Wow. It's like in Panama City, I'm assuming, or it's like the Miami of Central America. Almost.
It is.
It's like
we love Panama.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's like a real international hub that I think people don't realize exists outside of Central America as much.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing city, an amazing country. It's really like the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere. Banking capital, Latin America. At least at the time, because of that, it was flush with capital. And so borrowing rates were below what they are in the United States. Safe country. Yeah. You can drink the water. Beautiful, beautiful city. Incredible people, too, who are very welcoming of everyone. It's like just an international hub. And so people from all over the world who end up there. And so only reason we left is we didn't want to raise our kids outside the United States, but I could see us retiring.
No kidding. Yeah. Wow.
So where'd you go after Panama?
That's when we went back to grad school.
So that's when you go to Cornell?
Yes.
Got it.
So then you guys build out ACRE, and then what happens?
So
what happens next for you in your career?
Yeah. So ACRE is happening while Michael's at Hines, I'm at NML. And one day, because of ACRE, I'm constantly meeting people. And I'd been tapped to open Mexico for Northwestern Mutual, so I was going back and forth to Mexico.
You have a crazy life. This is insane. Everything you're saying,
is really downplaying.
I'm like, come on, this is insane.
I know, and it sounds like it's planned, but most of it's not. Most of what I do, I fly by the seat of my pants, and I have a lot of fun. And to me, and by the way, when we get to CRE agents, I view time as our most important asset. And what I've realized as I get older and older is every minute becomes more and more valuable, and every dollar becomes less and less valuable. And I view that in my life. And so it's like I've reached a point this is where Stablewood comes in, where I don't want to spend a moment doing something that I'm not excited to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend time with people that I don't really genuinely enjoy spending time with. I want my kids, I want my wife, who 20 something years, just enjoy life, whatever that means. And so we moved to Miami a year ago because it's like,
you like it.
Let's go
fun. It's where everything is right now. Yeah,
I want warm weather.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Well, and you got married pretty young.
Very young.
It's like how old were you when you got married?
I was 22. My wife was 19.
Okay. Do you think there's something to that? Like, I feel like people who get married young, sometimes it helps them just be more grounded and more focused career-wise. What do you think about that?
Big risk, big reward, I think is how I put getting married young, because
can be the best investment in your life or the worst investment in your life, depending on how.
So we are totally different people today. Mm-hmm. Not that this episode is about marriage.
No, but people, this is interesting. How many kids do you have?
We have 3.
Okay.
Our oldest is 19, Sydney. She's in Argentina right now. It's super cool. My son, Preston's 17. He's going to go spend some time in Lithuania. We have
Look at this.
daughter.
This is insane.
Yeah, it's about living life too. It's
I love it.
I mean, when you get married young, and I don't recommend it, although it's, again, big risk, big reward. Yep. Like, if you can marry young and survive, it's so incredibly powerful.
I mean, you guys have really grown together. You've really done so much. I mean, your whole career.
Yeah.
And your relationship with your wife are, I mean,
your
whole life.
Yeah, it's everything. But it doesn't always work. Anyway,
they'll learn.
No, they'll learn.
Yeah,
and then this turns into a relationship episode.
That's right.
That's fine.
Okay,
we don't just do real estate. So continuing down the path. So you go to to NML. You spend how many years with them?
Okay, so I'm with them for 5 years. I'm in a really good place. That organization, at least the real estate group. It is full of people with no egos, but like just sound, seasoned, mature real estate investors. My first year there, I looked at $5 billion in real estate. Like, you don't get seasoned quicker, and you're not working. There's no team in my view that is better at investing in real estate at Northwest. So I'm sitting in this really comfortable place, and I get a call from a guy named Glenn Lowenstein. He met me through ACRE. Apparently, one of his analysts had put in an email request to ACRE asking for consulting support, which at the time we didn't do. We had this blanket response with full-time jobs, families, and ACRE. Michael and Spencer don't provide consulting services. So apparently he put in a consulting request. We'd said no. Glenn doesn't like to be told no. And so he emails me, and I get this email. It's very short and sweet. Spencer, my name is Glenn Lowenstein. I'm the former CIO of Hines and co-founder of Lionstone. I love what you're doing at ACRE. Would you have a few minutes to talk to me? And I'm like, this is really interesting. Yeah, sure. And so he and I get on a call, and it was the most invigorating hour-and-a-half conversation I'd ever had with anyone. Now, I've since learned that's part of Glenn. Like, Glenn is just this person that everyone enjoys talking to. He's got a very forward-thinking mind, and so you get in a conversation with Glenn, and it tends to lead to really mind-opening places. And so he and I, where that hour and a half went was, what does the future of real estate look like? Mm-hmm. In particular, what does the future of work in real estate look like? And at one moment we were talking about, what if you could automate all of the information flow through the sourcing and closing process, right? You think, and most of us, if you look at what we do on a day-to-day basis, at least 40% of it is just information management. It's taking unstructured information, it's structuring it, whether it's structuring it on a piece of paper in our mind or in a database or whatever. It's structuring information, and then it's digesting that information. If we're not the one who makes the decision, it's organizing it in a way that can be delivered to the person who makes the decision. A decision is made, and then that information is packaged in a different way, but it's the same information, by the way.
It's like PDF to PDF.
Yes.
To another PDF.
To eventually to an investment committee memo that's then signed by everyone. And we're like, what if we could automate all that such that the people lift it up one level? And so he and I have this hour-and-a-half conversation, and he's like, hey, I'm starting a company that wants to explore this for real estate. but not as a service provider, but as a real estate private equity firm, with the concept of let's take institutional capital and invest it in sub-institutional strategies that institutional capital can't get access to because of the complexity of the information. But we'll build tech that makes it all possible.
I've seen firsthand how the right platform can make all the difference for advisors and their clients. With decades of collective experience in investment sales, debt placement, and equity placement services, Graysteel has built a culture where collaboration, relationships, and excellence power results. Backed by concierge-level infrastructure, proprietary technology, and an entrepreneurial mindset, the firm enables professionals like myself and our team to deliver tailored solutions, precision-driven pricing strategies, AI-enhanced insights, and exceptional value at every stage. Discover how top professionals are scaling their business and continually unlocking new opportunities for their clients at graysteel.com.
Because when you say the complexity of information, are you just saying, like, is this the equivalent of Blackstone's not buying a 100-unit property because it's owned by a mom and pop and their accounting is done on a notebook?
That's exactly right. So if you're at a NML and you need to put out 5 or 10 billion in a year, you're not going to go buy a $3 million Starbucks.
Right.
You're not going to do that.
So you need volume. You need a lot of volume. You're somebody to produce this volume for you.
So if you're going to deploy institutional capital, either you buy big assets, which is what most institutions do, or you find a way to get small assets at scale. And the only way you get small assets at scale is through technology.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So where did that conversation lead?
Yeah. So we had several months where he courted me. We kind of explored this concept. He was putting a founding team together for Stablewood. This was late 2019, early 2020. And ultimately, the opportunity, the excitement of it exceeded the very comfortable thing I had. Mm-hmm. And so I left, joined the founding team at Stablewood, and incredible partners that Glenn put together. Former head of data analytics for the Houston Astros, former chief accounting officer for a peer real estate private equity firm, our CTO, Gert, who is now the CTO of CRE Agents, had, first off, writing code since he was a kid, but had been in prop tech before prop tech was even a word. And so understood the intersection of technology and real estate in a way that very few people in the world
It sounds like you guys are ahead of the curve because this is 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, this is really kind of right before everyone started using that magic word AI.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, we were aware of what OpenAI was doing. Mm-hmm. And some of the early GPTs, Gert and our tech team would play with, but they didn't have value to our business. Mm-hmm. And so my role, and it evolved over time, but largely my role was to pair the people with the processes and the technology to build then a system that would allow us to do things at scale. So for instance, in that first year, we brought in this systems engineer from Amazon as a consultant who had worked on their last mile, had taken a week delivery down to 2 hours and said, okay, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And he helped us develop a framework for taking a process and breaking it down to its individual parts, identifying where there are gates, right? These are like decision points. Mm-hmm. And then automating that. And so we did that with single tenant retail. We partnered with a big life co. They put in capital and we just started buying single tenant retail.
So can we take a step back?
Yeah.
And you certainly don't have to tell us how all the secret sauce is, I guess, made here, but it all starts on the acquisition side, deal flow side, and finding the deals. So how are you, just as an example, utilizing technology to find the deals?
Yeah. First off, there's not a deal that we did or we do at Stablewood that doesn't have a broker partner involved. Okay, we see them as indispensable. Number one, because from a process standpoint, they take a lot of the unstructured work on their shoulders rather than ours. And for us, it's about, taking a lot of unstructured things and structuring it. And as soon as you structure it, you can then take one piece of data, we call that an attribute, and that attribute then becomes an input into everything else that happens down the stream. And so from a deal sourcing standpoint, we get to know as many broker partners as we can across the country. They feed us deal flow that goes into think of it as a funnel. So an OM comes in, that OM is instantly structured. We extract all the attributes from that OM that feed into our analysis. That goes into an engine that then pulls in for that address literally thousands of attributes from data sources that we either license, we built, or we take public, or we grab from public sources and we have standardized. And so imagine an address or even a point. We know things about that point that are in all these databases that tell us something about that asset.
Yeah. You do a very good job simplifying this, but are really skipping over just quite how difficult it is to standardize information, especially across the market, even marketplaces, even city code. It's night and day.
Yeah.
Every jurisdiction over. So it's nice to hear it in this format.
Yeah, we had Albert Loico on from Lightbox, and that's kind of one of the things we talked about too. Is Lightbox and real capital markets. It's their same issue, and pulling it all into one place.
Yeah, and they're doing it as a service provider.
That's right.
Stablewood is really two pieces of it. The first is like an automation piece. It's like, how do we process information, organize information, and report that information to a layer that then makes a decision? So that's the one part. And then the other is data aggregation. They're actually two separate pieces, and Stablewood figure that out well. Okay.
So it pieces it all together, and then it gives your acquisitions team the green light to look further into those deals.
So OM comes in the door, it's automatically structured, it's put into the machine, and out comes an investment committee memo. Okay. It's magic. Out comes an investment committee memo, and then the decision makers, which are in an organization relatively lower, I don't know how else to say it, right? Our analysts are making investment decisions, and they might be micro decisions like a pass or select decision. That's the very first decision in the Stablewood process. It's like, do you pass on a deal or do you select the deal? But they're looking at an investment committee memo with a full GIS with hundreds of metrics on that GIS. And then, but ultimately it comes down to there are 6 to 8 things in a given strategy that you might look for. Do you select the deal to spend more time on, or do you pass on that deal? And but what's cool is when you have an apparatus to do that sort of automation, not only are you creating an investment committee memo to make a pass select decision, you're building a comp database, lease comp, replacement comp, sale comp, or listing comp. You're pulling in so much data that Stablewood's now built in the single tenant space, a database, a comp database second to none.
I only know one company that ever did this early on, and it was Amherst Residential, and they did it with single family homes. They were big in the SFR, BFR market originally, but nobody had ever done it on the commercial side. That leads me to another question. Why'd you guys choose single tenant retail? Is this a decision because that's where the capital was and what they wanted, or is it specific to making the decisions?
So one of Glenn's skills, he calls them superpowers, that he learned at Hines, he developed some of the first non-office development strategies at Hines as CIO, is the ability to craft real estate strategies. He's done 10 of them or 12 of them in his career. And so the first step of Stablewood was, okay, what strategy do we pursue? And there were a few reasons for single tenant retail. The first was it was sub-institutional, and so we could apply technology to it. The second was, at the time, retail had leprosy. We thought retail was oversold. But what's also interesting is that not all retail is the same. And all retail had, so retail, like single tenant retail, had been baby had been washed out with the bathwater, so to speak. It was relatively healthy compared to other asset types. Also, the pandemic was hitting, and there was this concept of convenience how can I forget the word? But the retail that stayed open, essential.
Yeah.
There's this concept of essential retail. And so all of this kind of played into our thinking as we looked at the entire universe of possible strategies. Single tenant retail checked a lot of boxes that made sense.
Well, and it's I don't want to say it's a commodity by any means, but it's certainly something that look, it's cap rate driven, very much so, right?
Yeah.
It's you have a lease.
Well, that's another piece to it. It's simple. So
very simple.
When we're trying to do something relatively complex, let's simplify the inputs.
Well, and I hate to bash our STNL friends out there, but I mean, this isn't rocket science, right? I mean, it's probably one of it's one of the easiest things to underwrite.
It is one of the easiest asset types to underwrite. There's more complexity than you might think. But the inputs are relatively simple. Another thing is it's dominated by mom and pop 1031 investors. And so it gives an institution an advantage. There
makes
quite
sense.
A few reasons.
So you get an OM, how quick do you get that investment committee memo?
15 seconds.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That saves a lot of time.
Yeah. Saves a lot of time. All right. So now I want to move into the topic that I've been waiting to ask you about. So CRE Agents is branded as a vertical AI agentic platform. What does that mean?
Speak English to us. So
explain that
for people that know nothing about technology.
Yeah. So when we say vertical AI agentic platform, we're more communicating to the tech side of the world so they understand what we're doing. To our customer, if you will, we call it a digital coworker. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think that is an image that's a bit easier more palatable to understand. But what is a vertical AI agentic platform? Essentially, what we're doing is we're building digital coworkers for the industry. Okay, these are digital entities. Our CTO likes to think of them as like a bodiless robot, although.
That sounds less sexy.
But
it's processes. Just
I like digital worker.
Digital coworker. This is a member of the team, and I think that's an important distinction from like AI agents you see. Which AI agents, first off, doesn't mean a whole lot anymore because it's everything from a chatbot to a digital coworker.
It's used everywhere.
It's overused at this point. To us, a digital coworker is a digital entity that can actually autonomously or semi-autonomously add value to a team. And so they're doing things like you have a quarterly valuation, you get a Yardi rent roll. You need to parse. The very first step is you got to parse that Yardi rent roll. It's been exported to Excel, and you need to parse it. And parsing it means, and for those who have done this like thousands of times, the first step is unmerge the cells.
Everything. Yeah.
So you unmerge all these cells.
How have they not? How has Yardi not figured that out yet?
Don't get me started on some of this stuff.
Figure out the export.
And so it's simple steps like that parsing the rent roll, and there are firms that have tackled this, and so, but someone or something needs to do these small little steps, and then you take that rent roll, you unmerge the cells. Oftentimes the columns break, and so you've got to ensure that so there's a fixing piece to it, and then every firm is a little different for what they do with the rent roll. The next step, and that's important that I say that because you could create a software solution, but the problem is a software solution is going to be linear. And so if one firm does it this way and another firm does it that way, a software solution would be this way. And then either this firm has to change their process,
or you have to customize,
or the software has to create a new feature to do it this way. The beauty of generative AI is I can teach a digital coworker how an analyst would think about this. And then simply, once it understands the fundamentals of the process, say, okay, I actually want to do it this way, this time. And it will be able to do that. It essentially writes a program. It creates that new feature.
The news is important, but if you're a busy real estate professional like me, you don't have time to skim through dozens of dry and ad-filled media outlets each day. That's why I read the CRE Daily. It's a free email newsletter that cuts through the clutter and delivers concise, witty commentary on the latest trends and transactions in commercial real estate. If you're a commercial real estate professional, you owe it to yourself to try it out and stay on top of what's happening in the industry. It's only 5 minutes a day. Visit credaily.com to sign up for free.
Can you give me an application example? Like, if you have one, right? So I put in a rent roll, and you're saying like one way versus another. What's like a subtlety between the two that it could help with? Yeah,
so that's a great example. We're working right now with an early access customer. They have a workflow they do every Monday. They get a series of leasing reports from their property manager. It includes a Yardi rent roll. It includes a renewal report, also an export from Yardi. And what they do is they take those two things and they produce a average chunk rent and an average rent per square foot by unit type. And they have their own classification for unit type. So in the rent roll, it'll be unit type is like 1FA3B. Right. And what that actually means is that's a one bedroom. Or it's and then there's another one, it's a one bedroom with a den. And so they might have on the rent roll 25 different unit types, but what they want to do is they want to simplify it to 6 unit types: one bed plus den, 2 bed. Okay. And so they're going to calculate an average chunk rent and an average rent per square foot for that rent roll, which that's the new week. So the rents have changed some over the last week. They also want to understand where is occupancy today versus a week ago. And they want to understand what's my renewal rate right now. Is it going up? Is it down? And so and then they have an Excel file where this analysis from the rent roll and the renewal report go into this Excel file. And right now there's an analyst, and it takes the analyst 30 minutes or an hour to do each one of these. And they own a lot of properties. It's a big time spent. And so we've taught the digital coworker to perform that work, such that the analyst job now is to check the digital coworker's work, not actually perform the work.
Yeah. And that's very different. Yeah.
And the benefit is not just time savings. That analyst, and I guarantee you, is getting dizzy. Right? If you've ever done the dual monitor thing, and you're an analyst, by the end of the day, I'm dizzy.
Yeah. And you get deal merge like crazy.
Like crazy. Oh, for sure. And when it comes time to actually make like a high level decision, you can't think strategically anymore because you're blind from looking at numbers.
And that's why it's so like, that's a funny point, right? It's like the analyst does so much work. And then you could ask them a question like,
what does this mean?
Do you want to invest in this? And they're like, dude, I've just spent the last 10 hours so entrenched in the model. I'm thinking about how vacancy changes month to month. It's nearly
They're
impossible.
micro tasks. There's so many micro tasks.
It's nearly impossible to make a big picture decision. That's why it's so funny. Like you always hear stories, you write this whole OM, right? You put a deck together for a deal. It's 20 pages, 30 pages. You hand it to your MD and he comes back with like 100 comments. Yeah. It's really easy to look at something that you didn't have to work on and spend a lot of time and call the faults.
I see these analysts all the time. They're great at being an analyst, but then when it comes to making that decision, is this a good deal?
I think it changes over time. Sure. And I think something like this really helps that change also.
The whole concept is let's have them lift up one layer, and instead of planting micro trees in a massive forest, they don't actually know what they're, lift up a little bit and see the trees being planted and understand the nature of the forest that you're building. And so that is one example of dozens of, we call them skills that we're teaching this digital coworker to perform that allows analysts to lift up on.
And so are you offering this as a service, or is this something that you're using personally, or both?
Okay, so I lifted out of Stablewood. So I was president of Stablewood. We sat around a table a year ago, looked at each other and said, we've got some cool concepts that we've prototyped here. Might any have broader market application? And the concept of the digital coworker, something that we had mastered at Stablewood, this concept of let's inject a digital entity to perform repetitive work, has application way beyond anything that we're doing at Stablewood, way beyond just sourcing and closing. It has applications in brokerage and asset management and portfolio management and investor relations. I mean, really any functional area of real estate where you have highly repetitive tasks, we can teach a digital coworker to contribute some value in. And so I lifted out of Stablewood. Stablewood is our incubator partner. So they contributed some IP, they contributed some capital, and I'm full-time now in building this CRE Agents concept. our vertical AI agentic platform. Okay.
I love it.
And we, in 2025, this year, are working with invite-only customers. So there's immense interest.
And it's basically customers who would want you to come in and help them streamline their processes using these agents.
Well, so the vision is that it's a platform such that every firm could use a digital coworker. They could take our existing skills that we built or create their own, okay? A durable solution. Right now, most AI implementations happening through, they're kind of people are hacking together solutions. So they're using a Zapier integration to this database, and they're using a Pinecone AI assistant coupled with a Pinecone RAG database in order to create their AI implementation. That's fine because people are trying to implement AI right now, but those are really hacks, right? They're gluing together different things.
That's what it feels like. That's a good way of
We're trying to create a durable platform level solution for the industry. That's where the vertical comes in. We're focused on commercial real estate. That means creating integrations with commercial real estate tools. So eventually the digital coworker will be able to build your Argus runs because it has an integration to
Argus. Is it kind of out of the box almost, or does it still have to be very customized for your clients?
So the vision is that it would customize itself.
Got it.
Okay. First off, it's not software. So software requires you to learn something new. It requires a dashboard that you learn. This digital coworker interacts with you through traditional communication mediums. So right now it's built into Slack, but eventually we're working on a Teams integration. So you would chat with it, you talk with it via Slack or it would work, or Teams. You'd text it, you'd email it, you'd get on a call with it, you'd get on a Zoom. The same way that you work with any other member of the team. The idea of let's take friction to zero. You don't have to learn something new with this. It's just like any other intern. And then you teach it just like you might teach an intern or an analyst how your firm works, how your processes. It comes with some existing skills, just like an analyst would show up at your shop with some skills. But at the end of the day, you still have to teach it to do things specific to your firm.
Sure.
I keep thinking, speaking of just, ChatGPT, for example, to me, the game changer is when it can be so easy as hey, I'm going to be in San Francisco next week. Who do I know that I went to high school with that is in, single tenant net lease real estate and is just switched jobs last year, right? To get down to where you can really use data in a more simple form. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with this too.
That's part of it. It will only let me go one step further. So that required you though, to
be specific about what I wanted.
I want these things. But what if you taught it that anytime I travel, I want this in my inbox or this in my Google Drive before I leave. And it knows, it just simply is tracking your calendar. And it goes, let me use my integration to LinkedIn, my integration to Salesforce to look through. Hey, you might consider meeting with these people. Oh, and by the way, this is the name of their spouse. This is
totally.
And you walk into a meeting, it's right there. So that's the vision. This is a member of your team. You teach them to do things, and then they autonomously or semi-autonomously do those things.
And will it, or does it integrate with CRMs like Salesforce?
It will. It will. We just launched our MVP, minimum viable product. We're working with really invite-only customers at this point in time. And because we're hyper focused on product. Let's get the product right before this becomes widely available. And so it's about integrations like you're talking about. It's about building skills before we ultimately go to market, likely in, call it 2026 more broadly.
It's a great concept. And it sounds like you actually, a lot of people use these AI as buzzwords way too often. You clearly know what you're doing and are all in on this.
Well, AI doesn't mean anything. It's one of those terms that really doesn't mean anything. When we say AI, what we're talking about is creating digital entities that are members of your team.
So Spencer, we're coming to an end here. I want you, with all of your depth of experience, which we could talk hours about, give the give the listeners, all the young analysts, associates, your insight to where you think the next few years go in real estate, how something like this influences it, and what skills should they be picking up, going into their careers early on.
So the visual I have in my mind is of the telephone switchboard operator. Okay, we've all seen it on TV. We didn't live through those times. A person sitting at a desk, a light flashes, and that's an incoming call. And they lift it off. They talk to it. Where can I route your call? They say, I want it to be routed to New York City, wherever. Okay, and they transfer that. That is information flow. Okay, unstructured, and they structure it by identifying where from A to B goes. That's our industry right now. Okay, and if you're an analyst, you're sitting in that chair. And I mean no disrespect to all of us who've sat in that chair. And actually, if you're sitting in that chair, you're like, I don't want to sit in that chair. I actually want to live one step above that. And so you won't sit in that chair one day. You'll still, though, have to understand how to route that call. Mm-hmm. That's still an essential skill. But in the same way how I use that example of planting trees versus seeing the trees be planted, the analyst, the day will come, and is it 2 years or is it 5 years? It's certainly within the next 10 years. The information, the repetitive information-rich tasks won't be performed by people anymore. They'll be performed by AI. And you will manage that AI. And so it means actually understanding the forest, how to build a forest, what types of trees to plant, where to plant trees, and not necessarily have someone tell you plant the tree right there. Mm-hmm. And so it means that the analysts in our industry have to lift up a bit. It makes education more important, not less. So things like graduate degrees in real estate, I think, become more valuable because the subject matter then becomes more valuable. It does mean that you've got to learn to do the process, like in the same way with math, where you learn to do it by hand before you use the calculator. I think that still applies here, but that day is coming.
Yeah. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. Well, and I think give us just one takeaway on how to have the most fulfilling and successful career in what you're doing, because I will tell you my takeaway from talking to you has been have fun.
Yeah.
Because everything you've done, it sounds like you've had a lot of fun doing it.
Well, so first off, we are lucky to be in an industry that is just naturally fun. Mm-hmm. That's what attracts most of us. It's like a tangible asset. There's something about real estate that is innate. You think about it, like everything that we do is housed by real estate, whether it's where we were born, or it's where we live, or it's where we play, or where we shop, or where we worship, or where we die. Like, all that's real estate. And so it's just this innate property type. And so we are lucky for that. But absolutely, life is too short to be doing things that make life less exciting, not worth living, right? Life is just too short. And so whether it's automating repetitive tasks that make us go home and bang our head against the wall, or it's moving to a new place because you need a change, or it's going to a new firm because that firm is going to put you in a place, or it's starting a business. Seriously, life is too short.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. I really like that. That was a good note to end it on.
Thanks for coming on, Spencer.
Yes, it was so fun. A pleasure to finally meet you after all these years hiding behind a screen. Looking at your models.
It's good. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great.